We are very honored today to have a great friend of the church, George Weigel, who is a senior fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center, and a tremendous leader, as I said upstairs just a few minutes ago, in the cultural wars, both in the front, in a very public way, and also behind the scenes. He's got a really spectacular network of friends who are working on every aspect of the culture. He is also very well known for his writing over 20 books. Witness to Hope, the biography on St. John Paul, is probably, at least in my mind, the best known. He is actually here introducing Lessons in Hope, which is the third of a three-part reflection on the Pope, the first one being Witness to Hope. And this one, though, Lessons in Hope, is a great opportunity. I've been blessed to have a friendship with George for a number of years. I've had the opportunity to share a meal or a glass of wine, and to be able to do that and have him share stories of what it was like to spend carefree timelessness with St. John Paul is a spectacular way to spend an evening. That's what this book will do for you. He's going to share, he shares those very personal stories in Lessons in Hope. And by the way, he's here, and so this is my personal copy. You can get him to sign it, so I'm just going to leave it right there, George, so you can sign my copy. So with no further ado, George Weigel.
Good. Thank you, Curtis. First of all, thank you to all of you for what you do. Focus, as I have said in Catholic venues literally all over the world, is one of the great initiatives in the 21st century church. It's a distinctive embodiment of the new evangelization, and I am deeply impressed by what you do and how you do it, and I want to be as helpful as I can in that. I would like this to be far more of a conversation than a talk, so let me just begin with a couple of things about John Paul II, in the hope that it will inspire you to get the book and get to know him in a more intimate way. I suspect many of you have slogged your way through Witness to Hope and the end and the beginning. This book does not have a single endnote in it. This is completely anecdotal. It's all bite-sized bits. There's no section that's longer than 4 or 5 pages, and it doesn't crush your chest when you're reading it in bed at night. So, that's what this is all about. In terms of my experience with him that bears on what you do, let me simply say this. I have been asked hundreds of times, why was John Paul II such a magnet for young people? Particularly in the last 10 years of his life, when he was having lots of problems physically, certainly didn't look like someone who normally attracts great enthusiasm from young people. And my answer has always been twofold. He was a magnet for young people, first of all, because he was transparently honest. He was not asking young people to take on any burden that he had not taken on himself, to risk anything that he had not risked, to suffer anything that he had not suffered. It was transparently honest. And that's attractive. Kids have, as you all well know, very good, I'll use the polite term since we're on camera here, very good baloney detectors. And that transparent integrity, I think, was very compelling. And the second thing that I think was compelling was that he did not pander to young people. Young people today are constantly pandered to. You are wonderful. You can be whatever you say you are. You don't really have to work hard at anything. There's no, suffering is simply something you can put aside. Pander, pander, pander. Walk through any mall in America and you see pandering to young people, now in an increasingly lewd fashion, all the time. And John Paul II did not pander to young people. He challenged young people. He said in many variations on one great theme, never ever settle for anything less than the spiritual and moral grandeur that the grace of God makes possible in your life. You will not live up to that all the time, perhaps even most of the time. Very few of us do. But when you fall, don't lower the bar of expectation. Pick yourself up, dust yourself off, seek reconciliation and forgiveness, and keep trying to embody that grandeur that the spiritually and morally that the grace of God makes possible in your life. But don't settle for second best. Don't settle for anything other than conformity to Christ, who, Gaudium et Spes 24, reveals both the face of the merciful Father and the truth about our humanity. And that was enormously compelling. And that challenge came out of his own experience as a university chaplain. This was a priest and bishop formed at the very beginning of his priesthood by university chaplaincy. And while he was forming young adults under very difficult circumstances in Stalinist Poland into mature Christian men and women, they were forming him into one of the most dynamic young priests of his generation. He never forgot that. These young people became his lifelong friends. 75 of them were at his funeral, seated right behind the heads of state and government, having slept on the streets of Rome outside St. Peter's Square the night before in camping gear. It was really quite a wonderful scene. And when he had the idea for World Youth Day and was told that he was crazy, you know, you are nuts, Your Holiness. Kids aren't interested, they live on a different planet, they speak a different language. He said, no, I know the young heart, and it wants to be summoned to heroism. And we know what the result of that was. And as focus is a result of that intuition of his, that young people want to be summoned to lead lives of heroic virtue. 4 years ago was this? 3.5 years ago, 2014, I see somebody has City of Saints here. My son and I were over in Krakow. I teach there every summer. He was over to do the photography for this, that's fine, for this book. And it happened to be the 50th wedding anniversary of two of these kids from the original Wojtyła kids in the late 1940s. The guy, whose name is Piotr Maletsky, was orphaned during the Second World War. Both of his parents died during the war. He was 9 years old when Wojtyła came to the parish of St. Florian's and, you know, sort of took in this orphan boy who was being raised by two maiden aunts. Piotr went on to be one of the world's leading high-energy particle physicists. He helped design the supercolliding superconductor in CERN, Switzerland. So if the whole world implodes when they crank that baby up to full speed, you know who to blame. His wife was, at the time of this story in 2014, the vice dean of the Krakow Academy of Music. These were the kind of lives that came out of these Wojtyła kids. But anyway, so Piotr and Teresa, who are very dear friends of mine, it's their 50th wedding anniversary. Mass is in Wawel Cathedral, and then we're going off to a dinner afterwards. But standing outside the cathedral are another couple of dozen or so of these now elderly former Wojtyła kids. And they're all giving the Maleckis flowers, which is the thing you do in Poland on occasions like that. And I said to Stephen, my son, you are looking at the beginning of World Youth Day. World Youth Day did not begin in Rome in 1984. It began with these people when they were 18, 19, 20, 22 years old here in Krakow in the late 1940s and early 1950s. So, you know, you never know what an initiative is going to lead to, but I am convinced that the seeds you are sowing through the work of Focus are going to yield a very rich harvest for Christ in the church in the 21st century. It may be for some a harvest of martyrdom in some form or another, either the literal thing or professional difficulties or personal difficulties, who knows. But you're preparing kids both to convert the culture and along the way to play good defense against those death-dealing parts of the culture with which we're all familiar. So thank you for that work, and we've got some time to talk about whatever you want before I start signing books for people. Okay, so who's first here?